You're listening to the Extraordinary Everyday Podcast with Wendy Johnson, episode number 22.
Welcome to the Extraordinary Everyday Podcast, where women come to be inspired and motivated to become the best version of themselves and elevate the quality of their everyday. Now, here's your host, certified life coach, Wendy Johnson.
Hello there, beautiful friends. Welcome to this episode. And I'm excited to talk to you about how to beat procrastination and overcome resistance. If you want to learn how to stop self-sabotaging and start fulfilling your greatest creative potential, then this is the episode you'll want to listen to. And I am basing this episode on a book I read this last year. It was written back in 2002, and it's called The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It had been in the back of my mind for many years that this was a book I wanted to read, and I finally read it this last winter, and it changed my life. And this is a book that I'll probably read every year. It's a small book. It doesn't take very long. And what Steven Pressfield talks about is resistance, and that most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. And between the two is this thing called resistance. And this is the secret to overcome your procrastination. And this book is divided into 3 sections. And the first section is to know thy enemy, which is resistance. The second section is to become a professional. And the third section is to banish the ego. So let's start out by first talking about the enemy, which is resistance. And what is resistance? Resistance is the negative force that actively is working against us to stop us from doing the things we want to do. And this is an internal force within us. It's our enemy within. And resistance comes up as self-sabotage. And it usually manifests itself as avoidance, procrastination, or inaction caused by fear, which causes us to become paralyzed. This is a universal force. We're all affected by this internal force. I love this quote that he says, resistance is infallible. And Pressfield goes on to say, it's like a magnetized needle floating on a surface of oil. Resistance will unfailingly point to true north meeting, that calling or action it most wants us to stop us from doing. And it doesn't only affect writers. It hits endeavors such as business, education, breaking bad habits, and even a diet or health regimen. Funny though, but it doesn't stop us from watching Netflix or scrolling on our social media. Instead, it stops us from doing anything we really want to do creatively, to live out our dreams and to listen to those ideas that come to us and to act on those ideas. And this resistance is with a capital R. And it's going to show up every day that you show up. And when I started the podcast, I had these thoughts of resistance. Who do you think you are? Why would anyone want to listen to me? Everything's already been done before. Now is not a good time. I don't have the right equipment to start a podcast, and I really don't know what I'm doing. I had all these voices. If you have a dream to write a book, your resistance, that negative voice in your head, may tell you that you don't have what it takes to write the book. You're not smart enough or good enough of a writer to write the book. People are going to hate your book, and they're going to criticize what you write and how you write. So what we do is we procrastinate and we never finish our work. Because when we complete our work, we've opened ourselves up to criticism, and to our peers. And what fuels this resistance is fear. When we give in to fear, it gains strength. And in the book, Pressfield says, when you have fear that is good, because that means you're supposed to do that thing. So just remember this. The more scared you are of a work or calling, the more sure you can be that you have to do it. Ever since I read this book, I realized that what I'm most scared of is public speaking and going on video and recording this podcast. But because I'm so scared of it, it's my biggest calling, and I'm here to do it, and I'm here to give, and I'm here to share my knowledge. So resistance is that compass that points toward the thing in your life that actually is the most important thing to do. And then the second part of the book is about becoming a professional. And he compares an amateur and a professional. And an amateur acts on inspiration, they're mood driven, and they're not committed. They listen to the resistance, and they're only focused on goals that are related to fun, money, and status. They're focused on the external events. But on the other hand, the professional, his work is a priority, and he's committed to succeed and determined to follow that inner drive and focused on goals that are related to his passion. He's not avoiding the things that he's afraid to do. And a professional does it for the work itself, where you get lost in time and you take pride in your work. You don't have an identity with the work. You can step away from the work. If you fail at the work, it's not a failure of you. And a pro shows up no matter what. They work through diversity and they're open to criticism. And fear is just part of the work. They know it will show up every day. And they know that facing it is the daily battle. I love this quote that he says, when we sit down day after day and keep grinding, the muse takes notes of our dedication. She approves. We become like a magnetized rod that attracts iron fillings. Ideas come. And this is so true. When you start your work, all of a sudden, as you begin to move forward, ideas begin to flow. You can listen to that intuitive voice and you are guided. And the third part of the book is to banish the ego. And we need to know there's this ongoing battle between the ego and the self. Our ego is focused on themselves, the I, and it's more of external events and how people see us. We care about what other people think. The ego gives into resistance and is only focused on their status. And our self is who we truly are. And the self is willing to overcome the resistance and is focused on the internal ambitions and goals. So there's a constant battle between the self and the ego, and the resistance sits at the seat of the ego. And the ego is that part of the psyche that believes in the material existence. And it's concerned about its own preservation and comfort and the material and physical world. The ego likes things just the way they are, and it likes to be in control. And it's going to show up and keep you comfortable and keep you stuck and keep you from pursuing your dreams. So when you know this every day that you show up for something that's hard, you can overcome it. And the ego hates the self. Pressfield says, because when we seat our consciousness in the self, we put the ego out of business. He doesn't have a job to do. Ego hates it when the creator sits down to create, whether it's a book, a painting, or an exercise routine. Why? Because the ego hates to lose control and tries to cripple the self. And it hates creators because they are the pathfinders to the future. So if you get anything out of this episode, it's the most important thing about art is to work. Nothing else matters but sitting down and trying. And it's important to mention that you're not alone and everybody struggles with resistance. It's universal. It can show up in the form of fear of failure, fear of success, procrastination, avoidance, distraction, and self-doubt. And we're never going to leave it. It's always going to show up. And sometimes we do give into it because we're not perfect humans. But we don't want the resistance to be an excuse. And we want to treat that dream as if it were a job. And we want to schedule time every day to work on it and then just show up for it. And I would recommend doing your work in the earlier part of the day before noon, scheduling that 2 or 3 hours or hour that you want to work and show up for it. And then you want to make a commitment. And in the book, he mentions to a territory. Each of us has a territory, and it's a calling that we are here to share with the world, and we're to leave our mark on the world. And there's ways of knowing whether you are in the right territory. If when you do this work, you feel better every time you go there. And it's a place where you feel like you can grow, where you can be challenged and deeply satisfied at the end of the day. He says you can become a king of the hill by hard work, meaning that every day you can conquer the ego when you show up and you do the work. The output that you get is limitless. You can get back whatever you put in. So you don't want to wait for motivation, the perfect moment, or other people's approval. Just show up and do the work. And that is the best productivity hack I can give you. Oftentimes you have to start in order to get motivated. So I want to give you a simple call to action or takeaway for you. Listen to yourself, that inner self, and take action in order to find out what you're meant to do. And once you figure it out, do it as if you are a professional. Show up as if it were a job. And if you don't explore and utilize the gifts that you were given, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting everyone around you. So we're here to share our gifts. Are you a born writer? Were you put on the earth to be a painter, a scientist? In the end, the only way you can know is by taking action. So if you want to write that book, start that business, lose that weight, finish that project, then let this episode give you some fuel. Let it be tough love, reminding you that this resistance is always going to show up, and to focus on your work and the self to defeat the ego. In the end, we are all creative beings. We're all growth-oriented beings by nature. And we all have a creative source within us. We are all a channel of creativity. When we fail to act on our higher intuitive voices or urges, we're living a life unlived. And we're cheating others out of our potential contributions that we're supposed to give. So again, this is The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. And I highly recommend you pick up this book and give it a read. And I hope you found this helpful in whatever creative endeavors you're working on, and that you can continue to beat procrastination and all the other self-sabotaging behaviors that we're all inherited. So I hope this is a loving reminder, a little kick in the ass, a little tough love, that you're here for a reason and you have a creative source within you and you're here to give it, even if you're afraid, to just show up and do the work. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to next week with you all. Bye-bye now. Hey, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, you have to come check out More You, my community of like-minded women. We show up to create the highest version of ourselves and elevate the quality of our everyday along the way. Head over to ontraclifecoaching.com/join. That's ontraclifecoaching.com/join. I'd love to see you in there. And if you haven't grabbed your copy of the Mindset Makeover, head over to ontraclifecoaching.com/makeover and get a copy that teaches and inspires you to show up as your most extraordinary self.